Hello and welcome to the Tournament Center here at the World Championship. I'm Brian David Marshall. I am pleased to be joined by Pro Tour champion Simon Gertzen. Welcome to the coverage team, Simon. And how do you feel about watching a little vintage Masters draft? It's one of my favorite draft formats, and the best players in the world playing it, that's pretty much the best. And you know, seeing it live, seeing people actually cracking packs. We've already seen Yuya Watanabe's draft. Now we're going to get to see reigning world champion Shahar Shenhar, see what he does with his packs. And he was passing to Yuya Watanabe, so we have a little bit of an idea maybe of certainly what was not going on for Shahar's draft. But let's take a look and let's watch. Oh, there you get a look at the table. And you can see going around Yuya down here, Shahar there. Shahar was being passed to by Paulo, Li Shitian, and just, I mean, what a stacked table. Yeah. I mean, they're all stacked in this event. This is pod 1 for a reason. Yeah. So let's watch the action here as Shahar cracks his pack. Tell us what's leaping out at you. Yeah, so here. I see a Crater Hellion there, Soltari Trooper, and yeah, the rare is definitely a good start. You definitely want to look at the uncommons in Vintage Masters because they might allow for some archetypes. And having a mass removal spell is actually really good because you have something to trump the Battle Screech decks and the quick aggressive decks. Also a Blastoderm there. But Crater Hellion, you know, destroying drafts since it was printed. Yeah, you also don't really want to play against it. Do you really want to pick a Soltari Trooper and then face off against Crater Hellion that you pass to none other than Yuya Watanabe? Right, right. So the two players who've won this event the past 2 years, you know, one feeding the other. So yeah, he does take the Crater Hellion. Makes a lot of sense. And that leaves him open towards, for example, the Rift Slide deck, red-white control. There's a Fire Blast. There's a Solar Blast. Another Trooper. Yeah. Goblin Matron. Yeah, rather weak. You don't want to start off on the Matron for your Goblin deck. No, also not with the Crater Hellion already in your pile. Solar Blast would be an aggressive way to go into a Rift Slide cycling strategy. I don't like Fire Blast because it's really an aggressive card at heart. And yeah, there's also a Forgotten Cave. Which maybe you're hoping will come around to you? Yeah, you usually don't want to pick these too early. You could also just ignore your first pick and try to take the best card out of this pack. But given that it's so weak, I like just sticking with red here. Okay, so Solar Blast is the pick. Yeah, so now, of course, Astral Slide, Lightning Rift, with Crater Hellion even. That's the dream team. Krovikan Sorcerer, Chartooth Cougar. Yeah, I don't know how happy Shahar is at this point. Chartooth Cougar is fine if you already have a Lightning Rift, but he doesn't. So maybe Radiant's Judgment as a removal spell, and even if you don't have a target, you get to cycle it, exchange it for a new card. If you take Basking Rootwaller as a signal, you could move into Madness, but you really want the Wild Mongrels and the Arrogant Worms for that. So yeah, he just takes the Mountain Cycler. Yeah, that has to be the strategy to really just cut red hard and profit when it comes around from the other side. This format really only works if you get a color combinations like really figured out. And so far, I don't really see a strategy except for maybe being a control deck. So there needs to be something to make this work. Eureka is probably not it. Eureka Crater Hellion. Yeah, there's the Skirk Drill Sergeant, so there's definitely an option to move into Goblins, but his 3 red cards, don't really work with that. Scrivener to get back Solar Blast, maybe. How do you feel about blue-red? How do you feel about blue-red in Vintage Masters? I think the power level is so high that drafting control decks is really difficult if you don't have an engine card like Lightning Rift to power it. Yeah. He takes the Scrivener. I think that's a pretty high pick. Like, I would expect Scrivener to go much later, except for maybe the people playing Brain Freezes and Repulse. Right. So there's a Goblin Patrol, a Crozen Tusker, Forgotten Cave. Oh, Click Slither. Well, this is the point. This is the point where I just say I'm in red, and even if I've drafted red control cards up until now, Click Slither is a huge signal that Goblins can and should be open. He's got Crozen Tusker up at the front of the pack there, though. Yeah, it seems like he might be locked into control without having, like, I don't think that Crater Hellion is the perfect control card because it is a bit clunky. So also you don't want to play against Click Slither. Like if you don't have Exile ready, it's really tough. Yeah, I think this is the big decision point.
Okay.
Is it going to be aggro, or is it going to be totally control? Maybe hope for a rift or slide at some point.
You could set your Click Slither up to live through a Crater Hellion.
Oh,
you know, sack
easily.
one of those goblins that's going to die.
If you get the best goblin deck at the table, we see Goblin General there. You just don't play the Crater Hellion, and you're still fine. Keep in mind that the power level is so high that ultimately most players will end up with 30 good playables.
Right.
So yeah, Goblin General, one of the key cards to pump the whole team, combines really well with Beetleback Chief, and that's not really a difficult pick after having picked Click Slither, which I was afraid he would take Frozen Tusker for some reason, but I'm really happy that he has the triple red. What is it? Some kind of monster. It's not a goblin, that much I know.
Is it an insect?
Yeah, probably. So there we see some white cards. Another Goblin General. I think that the best aggro deck in the format is probably like Battle Screech fueled.
Sure, absolutely.
But if you can get the Goblin deck, then Beetleback Chief is your Battle Screech, and Goblin General is your Crusade.
Right.
So that works really well together. You can then pick up late Matrons.
Right. Then the card you really want to see at that point is Goblin War Chief.
Yeah, that's like one of the key uncommons. As we talked about, that's what you really want to be. I also like that you can play monocolored. So you just have some Forgotten Caves, some Chain Lightnings, and the rest is Goblins.
Okay, well, there's Skirk Drill Sergeant, and there may be another one of those coming back around the table, Tim. Even we saw one pretty early.
Yeah, the good thing is that if you aren't a dedicated Goblin deck, a lot of these cards are just not going to be good. And I like the Drill Sergeant here. There's Temporal Fissure if you want to go for Storm, and you see all these black aggressive cards. Icarid, Carnophage, and Fallen Ascari, and you know who's getting these cards?
Yeah, these are the cards we saw going through to Yu Watanabe. He did an excellent pivot in the draft away from green-white.
He realized very early on that green was not where he should be, and I was impressed by how he pulled that off.
So this is Shahar's opening pack here. Right?
Blastodem still in the pack. Yeah. Quite surprising.
There you see.
Scabland.
And Rocky Tar Pit.
Yeah, Repel. None of these cards is really a Goblin card. I think you could take a Scabland, but you don't even want to fix your mana with a tap land.
Yeah, he took the Tar Pit there. And Goblin Patrol and Giant Strength.
Yeah, Goblin Patrol should be the pick here. You don't really want a Giant Strength, and there's no reason to hate draft a card like Repel from your opponents if your plan is to just play small goblins.
What's the most Goblin Patrols you played in a Goblin deck in Vintage Masters?
Actually, the Echo does kind of hurt, but you can easily play 3 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing is, if you don't actually have a 2-drop, but you have another 1-drop, it doesn't even hurt you.
And then Aftershock is the pick here.
That's a good...
just a solid removal spell.
Not in control, clearly, but if you're an aggro deck, you don't care.
Yeah.
Something that I find really interesting about the Goblin deck is that it's not really as all-in as people think.
Right.
You can play a long game with Beetleback Chiefs, Goblin Commandos, and then maybe kill with their late Rites of Initiation.
Goblin Settler over Reckless Charge?
I think Reckless Charge is close to unplayable.
Okay.
You don't really want it. As I said, you really just want to have a better board than your opponent, and Shahar already has the Goblin Generals to help out there. Do you want to draft Storm? Dark Ritual, Cable Ritual?
Takes the Circular Logic past the Choking Sands.
Hopefully we get a good look at how his mana curve is looking right now. But he has Goblins at 1, 2, and 3. He knows that his deck is still missing something, and I think Beetleback Chief is probably #1 on his list. Given that Click Slither wants to really have more goblins to eat.
I gotta tell you, I'm gonna be really curious to see what happens in pack 3, because I have recollections of multiple Beetleback Chiefs going by at once.
There aren't too many cards that you should pick over Beetleback Chief if this is how your deck is looking, but this is going to be interesting. We have some prior knowledge.
We have some foreknowledge. Yeah.
It was difficult for Yuya to move into Black-White after first picking Armadillo Cloak, but I think it was also difficult for Shahar to move into Goblins after picking 3 control cards.
Right.
So that was something where he had to realize that his pick of Scrivener was just not going to work out. And Solar Blast is going to be a very good card in his deck. Crater Hellion, not so much.
You're expecting him to not play Crater Hellion at this point, or?
I would not play Crater Hellion. Yeah. I think that you don't want the 6-drop. You don't want to wrath your own board. If you think that your deck is particularly weak, you might want to just have it as a trump.
As a reset button.
Yeah. But I don't. Yeah. If your deck turns out like you wanted to, you're not playing.
Not a lot of weight weenie decks playing Wrath of God.
You'd play Armageddon. You wouldn't play Wrath of God.
All right.
Council's Judgment, Deep Analysis.
There's a Hulking Goblin.
Yeah, we have the best cards in the world here, and Hulking Goblin is what you're looking at. No, Chimeric Idol I think is stronger, even though it's not a goblin.
Right.
It's really tough to kill.
Well, and the way the first pack went around, I think he has to feel like the Hulking Goblin might come back to him.
Yeah, you really don't want to first pick a Hulking Goblin, although it's actually not that easy to find your 2-drops that are also goblins.
Right.
You can't always.
He has Deep Analysis at the front of the pack here. Okay. And then shifts it one back, takes the Chimeric Idol.
I think one of the strongest cards is the Council's Judgment, which in a 2-player format really just gets rid of the permanent that you want to get rid of. But it's double white, and Shahar is not looking to splash a color. Or is he maybe? Bassandra Battle Seraph. Yeah. It is a 5-drop. So even though a 4/4 flyer is definitely great, Fires of Yarimaha, that's also an option. But I don't really love going into a second color here.
There's really not anything for him.
No, I saw a Spark Spray at the end of the pack, which is
fine.
An option. It's similar to the Hulking Goblin, right?
Right.
It's the conservative pick. It's the pick that's going to make your deck. And there's enough creatures with 1 toughness. Actually, a lot of good creatures have 1 toughness. So I don't think you are unhappy about picking a Spark Spray. It just doesn't feel right.
And he takes Bassandra. He's like, well, let's play for some upside here. Let's see what happens.
There might also just be, if red isn't flowing from the left, the chance to pick up some white cards and have more of a...
There's a Beetleback Chief.
Yeah, Beetleback Chief is a lot better than Balance in his deck, clearly. And like we said, Beetleback Chief is what he's looking for. And I really don't know who is going to play Balance. It's really not easy to make a Balance deck work. You can do it in Cube sometimes, but in VMA, I don't really see it.
Very, very difficult to make it work.
So
looks at the Noble Templar, thinks maybe he wants a Plane Cyclist for his Bassandra, but it's got to be Beetleback Chief.
But there was a person just looking what is going to come around, if at all. But Beetleback Chief was the pick probably like 2 seconds into the pack.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he had enough Beetleback Chiefs when he passed through the Yu-Gi? I don't think that's possible. But let's see. Skirk Drill Sergeant. So what we do here is that a lot of the decision making is done now.
Yeah, once you're in the linear goblin strategy, you just kind of like, I'm just taking goblins.
The interesting part about VMA is how do you find the linear strategy that you want to be in, that's open, and that you can find the powerful uncommons in. Now, powerful uncommons, I think, are missing from Shahar's deck.
So, yeah. I'm curious. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in that pack 3, and that's something I'm really looking forward to.
You mentioned Goblin War Chief.
That could be the card.
I mentioned Rites of Initiation, which I think is superb.
Such an unfair card.
It's just, especially on Magic Online, if your opponent has F6, then they're just dead suddenly. All right, we see the World Champion that we saw. Yuya pass, Kindle. Chartreuse Cougar, not what his Goblin deck wants, I suppose.
Was that a Tendrils floating around back there too?
For the Storm deck that nobody wants to draft.
Yeah, nobody wants to draft it. Yeah, there's the Tendrils.
I would be drafting it, Brian. I would. All right. That's actually interesting. If you know that nobody wants to draft it, then it's a lot better than if you think there's a danger that somebody else will.
It certainly seems like all the tools were here at this table, and I'm curious if someone did end up with that deck.
Yeah, very surprised to see such a late Waterfront bouncer.
Wow. Fire Blast is spectacular.
Do you remember that he passed it easily after first picking Crater Hellion? Because it didn't really fit into his strategy at that point.
He was a control deck at that point.
Also, you aren't as scared of Waterfront Bouncer as in other decks, because if your opponent bounces a Beetleback Chief, that's actually good for you.
Yes.
But if you are a control deck that just has some clunky creatures, then Waterfront Bouncer can be a nightmare.
I never got Waterfront Bouncer going in any of my blue-green Madness decks.
You've missed out.
I know.
Okay, this might be a pack where Shahar doesn't have anything he really wants. Simian Grunts is actually really easy to play around and punishes the player playing it with his Echo cost. So I expect Simian Grunts to be one of the weakest cards in VMA at this particular table because there's nobody.
Nobody's gonna walk into a Grunts.
So even if they are attacking, you know they know, and they are going to punish you for it.
So no real card for him there. What was the red card?
Yeah, didn't look too interesting to Shahar. Maybe we can see it. Orcish Lumberjack. Yeah, that's really
not going to do much work in his deck.
If it was a goblin, I think it would definitely be playable with 2 goblin generals. And he actually hasn't picked up a Skirk Prospector, which is also kind of nice, more for an engine.
Right. Nice with the Skirk Drill Sergeant.
Yeah, you basically sacrifice a goblin, pay 2 additional mana, and then you see if you have a goblin on top. They can get out of hand really quickly. All right, the red seems to be drying up here. We see Brainstorm, Fledging Djinn, Soltari Emissary, Adel. This is basically the black-white cards that Yuya had to pick from. So Yuya was happy with this pack, rewarded for his switch into black-white. Shahar can really just hate draft the card. He does have the Bassandra.
Right.
So in theory, picking a white card could pay off.
I would be surprised if he ended up playing the Bassandra. Fires the Yavimaya just going around the table.
And that's something I've seen a lot, and it's not because of the power level of the card. You also saw the Blastodon Real, which I found super surprising. But in testing, I would guess that red-green didn't really put up the numbers in quantity or quality. You don't really want to play against the Battle Screech decks with a red-green aggro deck that's just a turn.
There's a nice Noble Templar there for him if he wants to, card he had identified as coming around the table. You talked about that earlier where he was like, is this going to come back? It did. Maybe makes that Bassandra a little easier.
That's a high upside, of course. If you draw the planes and you somehow flood out a little bit, you get a 3/6 Vigilance. Temple Fisher, yeah, that's also a danger with the Storm deck. People will just take the cards that have the higher upside if they get to work. But, I mean, you have to live the dream sometimes. Psychotalk bounce all your permanents. Attack for lethal. Okay, with such a late charge with Cougar, I think that there's probably no real cycling deck at the table. Also the Noble Templar Wheeling. Yeah. So probably, except for the Lightning Rift we saw.
We saw one Lightning Rift
in
the first pack, Takes the Tyrant's Choice, passes Nature's Lore. And
Skyshroud Forest, not the fixing he wants. Yeah. But to be honest, he even got a Fire Blast, so I wouldn't be surprised to just see him Forgotten Caves and Mountains for his mana base. That's something where you will just never lose a game because you didn't draw your second color. Is he looking at the black cards?
He is looking at them. I mean, he's a couple Fledgling Djinns, a couple Tyrant's Choices, but
I think if he counts his creatures, or even if he just counts his goblins, he already has a very solid creature base. And if I were him, I would stop picking spells now, except for maybe like the really good ones. He has enough burn to burn opponents out, to kill the creatures, blockers. And the cards he really wants is maybe a Matron or the Beetleback Chief.
Matron, Beetleback Chief, Goblin War Chief, and Rites of Initiation are the cards that I'm really hoping to see in the first picks in Pack 3 here.
If you get some Matrons, maybe a Goblin Commando as well.
Sure.
His late game isn't too good right now. But
all right. Here it comes. This is Pack 3, Vintage Masters.
So exciting. We've seen all but one card when this was passed to Yuya, but we do not know what Shahar first picked here. Palinkron, Chain Lightning. That qualifies as a good spell.
Goblin Patrol, which again he has to feel like it's going to come around to him.
Yeah, there's Ernemdin, Hymn to Torek, all powerful cards, but clearly not an option for him.
So Chain Lightning and Goblin Patrol get shuffled to the front of the pack.
I think that Goblin Patrol might be the more important card for his deck, as I've just said, but it's tough to pass that for a to pick that over a Chain Lightning, especially because Goblin seems to be so open.
Right. But the Hulking Goblin, didn't wheel. It did not wheel.
You're right. So it's still the Chain Lightning, but that's a good argument.
Yeah. Like
so if there's two Goblin drafters?
Yeah, you need those early drops, and you need to start getting pressure early.
And if your opponent is forced to trade off with the Goblin Patrol, it's basically doing the job that Chain Lightning would have done.
Right.
Black, green, white, and blue cards, and a Skirk Dual Sergeant. Not exactly the red cards we were talking about.
Right. On rails here for him.
It does have the right type line. There's a Plea for Power.
Plea, wow.
I love the design of this card. You basically get to ask if you want to a Time Walk or Ancestral Recall. Now, once again, I think in pack 1, Shahar wasn't super happy with what the packs gave him. And again, pack 3 is not looking too great. Maybe somebody is actually drafting.
It could be a Goblin drafter right nearby.
We still haven't solved the mystery of the Beetleback Chiefs.
Yeah. The Beetleback Imbroglio, starring Shahar Shenhar, boy drafter.
And he even has the Click Slither to go with it.
Okay.
Goblin General.
There's
Goblin
a War Chief. Oh, wow.
He even puts the Chimeric Idol in front and the Solitary Emissary. That's, again, just looking to see what else is in the pack. What are his opponents going to have? What might wheel from this? He sees another Exile, which might be important to play around.
Yeah.
I think Goblin War Chief is the slam dunk.
Yeah, absolutely.
It actually makes the generals even more absurd, who do pump themselves, so you get to attack for insane amounts of damage.
Yeah, there you see the Goblin General. He's like, please let that come back to me.
That's pretty optimistic.
Plea for Goblins. New card. Okay,
So
there's a Sulfur Vortex, a Skirk Prospector. Wow. I'm hard pressed to pass a Vortex here.
Yeah, this isn't cute, but it's pretty close in power level. If you know that you're going to be the aggressor, then you always want the Vortex more than a 1-mana 1/1 Goblin. Now, some of these decks are very aggressive of their own, and you might be forced to play a longer game. Then I don't like Sulfuric Vortex as much. As a card that you can sideboard out if it's not good.
Right.
It's definitely, it has the higher power level.
Probably not thrilled to have a Vortex against, say, Yuya.
I think against Green White Auras, you aren't happy to have it either. It's
right. So there's a Beetleback Chief.
This is the moment. There's a Mana Drain, another Brasandra. Is this the double Beetleback Chief pack? We only see one at the front.
I only see
here.
one. I mean, you have to take Beetleback.
Radiant. Oh no,
Yeah,
it's just the single Beetleback.
Yeah,
Chief.
you just take the Beetleback Chief here.
It is funny that he has a Basandra already, which would make his White Splash even more interesting. But to be honest, a 5-mana 4/4 fly is just worse than Beetleback Chief.
Yes, yeah. Especially now that he has the War Chief to just
and basically
that.
strictly tougher to cast as well. Forgotten Cave, Hulking Goblin. Yeah, I mean, I like to add some cycling lands to my decks. Basically, whatever colors I am. Hulking Goblin seems perfect here. This is really working out. I'm sure we'll get to see if there are other Goblin drafters at the table. They might also be a control deck that picked up some of the Matrons and Goblin Commandos for some value. Well,
he keeps thinking about those Forgotten Caves.
It's making me nervous.
Yeah.
It's like, is he thinking if that's reeling? But we know it's not reeling. It didn't reel the other time, so.
Oh, so Chain Lightning, double Beetleback Chief. Wow, I got to tell you, I'm hard. I know we know. Yeah, he's going to take the Chain Lightning.
We know that he is, but I wouldn't.
I can't imagine myself passing a Beetleback Chief here.
Especially because he picked the Chain Lightning, the very first thing in the pack.
Wow.
That's the pick I disagree with the strongest. That just Beetleback Chief is the #1 card you want to see in your hand, or on turn 4. Another Fires. There's a Skirk Prospector.
So it seems like there's almost no chance there's another Goblin player.
At least not an aggressive Goblin player.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my take. It's possible that the Matrons and Commandos just weren't opened. I maybe saw one total.
We definitely saw.
Did you see Matrons as well?
We saw at least one Matron in the first pack. I mean, someone may have speculated on Goblins and then gotten out of it.
In the first pack, there's a lot of finding your archetype, finding your color combination.
So there's an Aftershock.
Yeah, that's an Aftershock. If you have 2 Chain Lightnings and 1 Aftershock already, you don't even have to count. You know that you're not playing it. It's so important to have a high creature count, which is very different from Khans of Tarkir, for example.
Yeah, he just takes Urnimjin there.
Okay, maybe scared of the high toughness creature.
He's like, I can't kill this.
And like Forest Walk on a 1/1 Goblin is not the biggest downside. Yeah, and then there's some blanks, but you still get to decide what do I not want my opponents to play.
Sure.
I would be quite scared of this Elephant Guide myself.
Me too.
I don't think that hate drafting the Storm deck should be your top
He took
priority.
the Elephant Guide. The fine art of hate drafting here.
I really like his deck.
I do too.
I think Shahar has a Goblin deck that you would be very happy about in DMA.
What would you hate draft? I might hate draft a Sea Drake.
Yeah, Sea Drake is probably the card with the most potential.
Yeah.
As I've said, I think Reckless Charge is not something you want to ever play.
And just fight the good fight. Can't take out a counter spell. Yeah.
Don't want people countering your Goblins. Now, one Matron would make this deck even better because you would have access to another War Chief, basically. And you see that he's in the right colors. Red is just open.
You do see, though, the Goblin Patrol did not come back around.
And we were suspecting that.
Yeah.
There's not only the Goblin deck, there's the red-white aggro deck as well.
Right.
So they take Goblins as well, clearly.
Okay. There you go. I really like what he did there. I mean, you know, he I mean, an almost impossible pick to me, the double Beetleback Chief Chain Lightning pack. Yeah. You know, but he does have 2 Beetleback Chiefs already. He has the War Chief. You know, it's just a super solid looking Goblin deck.
And he almost had the same decisions to make as Yuya, but with completely different cards and completely different colors.
Starting out on Crater Hellion, you know, an early Scrivener, a Click Slither. You know, maybe thinking he's a different deck.
He had four non-Goblin deck picks before that.
Sure. So, but you know, Click Slither on top of your Goblin deck is also pretty nice.
It's the best.
Yeah, yeah. So we're pretty happy with it, how it looks. We'll see how it plays out. You know, 1 World Champion. We saw the Players Championship winner, his previous draft, Vintage Masters. I kind of wish I was doing one right now.
Me too.
Let's draft the Storm deck later.
Yes.
All right. For Simon Gertzen, this is Brian David Marshall signing off from the Tournament Center.